based on a bunch of drivers, and you need to cover security as well as just IT management in general. So how do you do this? This is an enterprise architecture. It's not supposed to show you how. It's supposed to show you sort of what. So anything that you can't read, you don't need to read. I would never make such a diagram with small text. I would not do that. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I can't even read it on here.
You know, this whole presentation will be in the GTRAs. Yeah. So I think
I'm just curious if that layer includes machines that are making decisions.
You know, I can't read it on here either, and I've forgotten what it said. But it's one of the less important parts of the whole thing, and I probably could have deleted it. So, sort of summarizing some of my preamble, you as agencies can jump ahead and create an ad hoc system. You can grab your security devices together into a custom integration, build your own dashboards. It'll be fun, but it'll cost a lot of money, take a lot of time. You'll be doing what Department of State did. There's another solution. You can do what Justice is doing. And this has been publicly said also, where you basically have one security product. And if you only have one security product and you like it, then great. You don't need standards. You don't need anything. You just use your one product. And if it does aggregation and correlation for you, then, and they can do that custom output to DHS, then you're fine. I argue, though, that most agencies want to have the best of breed security tools. In fact, most agencies are so federated, they can't control everything and force one tool down on everybody. So they're stuck with many tools. So how do we take our existing tools, not replacing them, but take our existing tools, work with the vendors to instrument them in a way that they can work together in this architecture? And we want it component-based as much as possible. We want to define different independent components where we can purchase different pieces from different vendors. And I'll tell you up front, I had, and I guess I have, great ambitions for this. And so did DHS with Caesars. But the more we decompose the problem, and the more we look at the individual pieces, the more we realize that we don't have security automation standards or any kind of standards to link those components together. And so in the near term, I think what we're stuck with is we're going to need to procure bigger pieces from a single vendor or cooperating vendors than I expected. Just a dose of reality up front. But we certainly do want to be standards-based for interoperability, for scoring consistency. And I mean standards on languages. So how do you check a machine? What should you check for? Standards on metrics. What equations are we using? What input is it? What's the input and output of those equations? Certainly nomenclatures, the same name for a product or a patch. And lastly, mentioning a need for a mathematically rigorous scoring approach. Department of State, in my opinion, does what I call motivational scoring. It motivates people to fix things, and that's good. Is it a true risk measurement? No. And certain minds, especially one in this room that I know, would tell me I might have difficulties achieving a true risk measurement, but I think we can do better than just sort of a motivational score. But anyway, that's more of a science discussion. There are other people focused on that right now, so I'm not going to focus on it. In particular, the NSA thinks they have some answers, and they're recommending those answers to the ISIMC and to DHS, and we will see what comes of it. So let's move on to the technical architecture. Okay, Wolf, you can wake up now. We've entered diagram mode. And I pick on Wolf because I decided this morning that someday I want to be like him. So, so as far as scoping here, I want to say up front, for the existing security sensors, the collectors, we do not want to replace them. We want to instrument them. For the aggregation part, hopefully we can instrument our aggregators. We might have to buy something new. This is where I need the vendor community to help me. You know, I've been off doing cloud for 2 years, okay? I don't know where the state of your products are, but I'm learning. So here's the DHS architecture. And again, small print, I would have never created the small print. I'm sorry, Paul.
My eyesight's just getting worse and I ignore it. I'm in denial still about the glasses.
So notice here they've got some subsystems. Sensor subsystem, database subsystem, presentation and reporting, analysis and risk scoring. So far, so good. And overall, when I read Caesars in draft form last June or so, overall, my opinion was they're the first horse out of the gate. Nobody's done this before. It's a good first effort. It has some good vision and direction, a foundation, but it doesn't get us exactly where we need to go. In my opinion, agencies that grab the DHS Caesars document, and they should grab it and read it, but agencies that do so will end up having to go through much of the custom integration that state had to do, with the exception that they'll be able to leverage some additional security automation standards up front that state is sort of building in later on. And so what I did is I don't like to cause trouble. I went to DHS and I said, great idea. Can we build on this? And they said, we like working with NIST. And, you know, so that partnership was formed. And so we started writing a paper and vetting ideas on, okay, what are the limitations of Caesars, and then can we improve upon that? So I proposed that we need to do that work in the ISMC. Colonel Jones, who was here on Sunday, said, well, who's going to be in charge of that? And me, being a scientist, not being able to commit NIST, of course, didn't say a word, and the NSA said, we'll be in charge. So that's when the NSA got involved, and they were already working on continuous monitoring. So I'm really glad they did. And the approach that we come up with needs to apply to the military as well as the civilian government. Because if it doesn't, then vendors will have to build different things for different parts of the government. And as a government, we're already too small compared to where we used to be 40 years ago or 30 years ago. We don't have the influence we used to have. We don't quite have the buying power, and maybe that's just because we're disorganized. But if we can come up with a single architecture that we all can use, that then has customizable components. So of course, the intelligence community is going to have a different emphasis for their implementation. They're going to use different collectors. They're going to have some of their own custom collectors. But the architecture, the aggregation architecture, can be the same. And that's what I argue for. And I argue for that for the military as well. So Caesars lacked interface specifications. It relied on an enterprise service bus that everybody might not want to use. It didn't completely define the payloads. It didn't have specifications for all the subsystems, so you couldn't really build to it. You didn't have the ability to have multiple instances